Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Every time I come to the Miami Book Fair, it just gets bigger and bigger and more festive. It reminds me sort of those ancient cities of the Near East, like Alexandria or Babylon or something. Every time it's quite marvelous. And at a time when, of course, the book as a physical object is being threatened by, by these very convenient devices that are spreading reading, like Kindle. But I just written this book about the visual arts. It took 5 years. I was trying to produce a very slim book, as slim as possible, that would be a comprehensive handbook, an introduction to the history of Western art. I would love to have done world art, but that would take another 10 years. And in the process of writing this, I was thinking, am I out of my mind? What am I doing in the age of Kindle? I'm trying to write an art book. This is absolutely insane. So when I submitted the manuscript last fall, it turned out that no, precisely because it's the age of the Kindle, Random House, or specifically Knopf Doubleday, the production design unit that's handled this, wanted to turn this book into an objet d'art, like a work of art, to try to show people what book arts can be. Now there's a book arts major, in fact, at my school, the University of the Arts, where I've been teaching for 28 years, and in this this sort of progression to handheld devices. It's extremely elegant. The industrial engineering, of our time is extremely advanced. In fact, that's one of the points I'm making in the introduction to the book. That industrial design is thriving. It's one of the fields that's thriving. It's been a 100-year progress, going from the early period of the 20th century. The art and design ideas coming out of De Stijl in the Netherlands and the Bauhaus, which influenced in Germany. Just in appliances and computers and everything just getting beautifully engineered. So one of the things is that young people today, young people's primary aesthetic experiences now are in their handheld devices, which they personalize. There's a real elegance into Apple, the original Apple computer, which is a tremendous advance in making a beautiful object, for the home after the gigantic mainframe computers that took up rooms, before. But the problem is that an iPhone has no spiritual dimension to it. It has no message of its own. It's merely a kind of conduit. And then young people or older people, you have no real attachment to the object. When the next model comes out, you discard the old one. Okay, so there's no sense at all of artistic permanence and or value in the object. So we're actually, I feel that we're in a major crisis involving the fine arts today. That the fine arts in general have flat lines, and that it's not that good work is not being done in the arts. I'm talking worldwide, not just the US. Now, it's not that good work isn't being done. It's that every time I see a work of contemporary art, I'm reminded of like 10 other things that preceded it over the last 100 years, many of which were better. Okay? So we're in a period where there's no distinct style, and that's good in a way. It's like pluralistic. But especially in the US, where the fine arts have never taken root. This is a practical, utilitarian country. And the fine arts have always struggled for positioning. Part of it is that New England was founded by Puritans who were an extreme Protestant sect who were driven out of Europe. Okay, and they descend from the iconoclastic Protestant reformers: Martin Luther, Calvin, Zwingli. By iconoclasm, I mean destruction of images. Okay, was a policy of the Protestant reformers. They felt that the statues of the saints and of the Madonna and the stained glass windows of the medieval period of the medieval churches and cathedrals were a pagan intrusion, okay, or survival, which is actually historically true, okay, into Christianity. So what Protestantism was all about as a reform movement, as a rebellion, it wanted to return Christianity to study of the Bible. In other words, it's not in the Bible, it's not Christian, it's something alien, which is actually, it's true. I mean, my ancestors, Italian ancestors, there's absolutely no doubt. The Christians arrived, okay, and they said, okay, all right, they adopted the Christian, iconography and so on, but they just went right on stubbornly worshiping the great goddess, of the Mediterranean. They just renamed her Mary. They reduced, Jesus to like a baby and put the baby in her arms, and that's it. Okay, anyone who's been raised in Latin Catholicism, including Mexican Mexican Catholicism and South American Catholicism, is amazed when you go look at the Bible, okay, and you see, where's Mary? You've been raised with Mary as this goddess in the household. I mean, my grandmother would kind of Madonna Mia, she was everywhere, okay, and so on. All right, they're always going to novenas to pray to Mary, etc. You go to the Bible, where's Mary? It's like she whizzes by. There's like, oh, there she is. It's like twice, like you see her a couple of times. That's it. Okay, it really is true that this like image-heavy Southern European Catholicism was a kind of survival of paganism. All right, so at any rate, here we've got this in the United States, this kind of anti-image or iconoclastic Protestantism having taken root. And then I also say that the conservative movement in the U.S. over the past 30 years has been very much driven by Southern Baptist, evangelical Christianity, which is one of the most, image, I don't want to say image impoverished, but it's image free, okay, of all religious sects. So in this country, unless your parents happen to be interested in the arts and provide artistic opportunities for you, take you to museums and so on, it's really highly unlikely, okay, that most children have any exposure whatever, okay, to the fine arts. Okay, so this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, is to try to, it's like sort of the first step in a crusade, to try to get art history into the primary schools. And I mean art history, what's called art classes, okay, in the U.S. All it is do it yourself, okay? They hand you the construction paper, the glue pots, and you're supposed to express your inner creativity. It's descending from John Dewey, the John Deweyite philosophy and education. Well, this is all fine and good, okay? But that doesn't help anyone, okay, know anything about the fine arts. It doesn't develop your eye. It doesn't cultivate you. In Europe, it's assumed that you're going to have courses in art history, at the elementary school level, because that's their heritage. It's like thousands of years of tremendous art being produced in Europe, which is, it's actually kind of double-edged sword. Okay? So much great has been produced that it's somewhat oppressive, okay, to have that around you. We in America are known, celebrated for being so innovators, having such free, and inventive minds. It's precisely because we're so young. It's like a 200-year-old nation, and the dominant thing here is really nature. I mean, that's kind of our art form in a way. We have like a spectacular geography, the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, and so on. So nature painting, and the celebration of nature have always been very strong here. But the fine arts themselves, okay, have always struggled. Now, in my new book, I have this 3,000-year passage going down from ancient Egyptian tomb painting all the way down to abstraction and right down to digital art. I end with George Lucas's Revenge of the Sith in the last chapter. Right? And one of the things I'm actually trying to do, I'm trying to reach two different audiences. I'm attacking two different audiences. One is liberal, and the other one is conservative. Okay, so. Conservatives, I listen to, I'm a registered Democrat, okay, but I listen to a lot of talk radio. I adore AM radio as a populist medium, okay, and I really regret that so few liberal hosts have been able to thrive in that medium. Their medium is NPR, okay, which paradoxically, NPR and the BBC, are very leftist in their political orientation, but the tone of both NPR and BBC is utterly genteel, haute bourgeois, okay? It's completely mellow and tasteful. And if I have to do an NPR interview, I have to talk to myself for like a half hour. I like to bring it down, go slow, don't throw them off, and so on. All right. Whereas AM is this populist medium, very brash, very abrasive, okay? It descends from the DJs of the 1950s, okay? Who will be these weird guys who would say, check out this platter, etc. So there's kind of this barking vaudevillian sound, okay, to AM radio. I find it very invigorating, and also because there's so many callers coming from all areas of, social classes, working class, okay, voices, calling in, particularly sports radio, okay? I mean, you hear people calling in, from trucks, from construction projects, giving this incredibly detailed analysis of everything that went wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, yesterday, A, B, C, D. It's incredible, okay, to hear these voices. It's the only forum in the United States that allows working class people to just call in and to express themselves. At any rate, okay, I've been hearing on talk radio for the last 20 years, political talk radio, a lot of animosity toward art and artists, okay? And the reason is because it's coming from those stupid controversies over sacrilegious art, okay? We're going from the 80s and the 90s, okay? Now, my whole career is about defending pornography and prostitution and and everything. I'm still staying with that, okay? I'm totally pro-porn, okay? But I thought that those sacrilegious incidents were outrageous, okay? In the way that the art world, okay, did not, the way the art world reacted with this insularity and this kind of snobbery, okay, automatically, okay? There's some sort of a controversy. Yay, that means we're avant-garde, okay? So you have this fifth-rate work, okay, Andre Serrano's Piss Christ, okay, which was a plastic crucifix submerged in a glass tank of the artist's urine, and then photographed and then blown up to this large. This is like a gimmick. It was a gimmicky nothing, okay. All right? I mean, to me, it's like high school. It was high school, right? And the artist never, was such a weenie, okay. He wouldn't even admit it was transgressive. Oh no, what I was trying to show, okay, was the cheapening of Christ's image. And today, oh yeah, that's why you called it Piss Christ. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, all right. Now, so here's the point. The art world stereotyped itself in the eyes of mainstream American citizens, where the arts have always struggled. Right? It stereotyped itself as frivolous, anti-religious, anti-American, nihilistic, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, in Europe, you can do all kinds of avant-garde things in Germany. I mean, the government actively supports avant-garde art in Germany. It's because the Germans have such a bad conscience about so much in their history. Because yes, flail us, flail us. Okay, so that's why the government supports it. Okay, all right. But here, okay, people don't realize that for most Americans, okay, the arts have always seemed suspicious and kind of effete, and again anti-American. So I was as a career arts teacher in arts colleges. I've been teaching 40 years, okay, in arts colleges since I first emerged from graduate school in 1972, okay? I have been just in an incredible writhing in pain, okay, at the lowering of the image of art and artists in the eyes of mainstream citizens. Right? And so in the last straw, so the National Endowment for the Arts, already pitiful amount of funding, okay, was under challenge from Congress, nearly was completely eliminated. All right, and then slowly, step by step, I thought things were getting better in the 90s, and people were more accepting now, of arts funding and so on. And then another ridiculous incident, 1999, the Brooklyn Museum of Art, the Sensation exhibit that came over with the Saatchi collection from England. Now, I mean, the only breath of criticism of what went on with that, okay, was Philippe de Montebello of the Metropolitan Museum criticized the director of the Brooklyn Museum of Art for financial improprieties, for being so passive to this financier from London, and just like accepting, the wholesale without any, anything, whatever Saatchi wanted and so on. I was the only voice, okay, that took this other view, okay, of this controversy over, again, another third or fourth-rate work, okay. It was by a British Nigerian artist, Chris O'Feely, called The Holy Virgin Mary. And it's a rather cartoonish, a caricatured image of Mary. If it had been done by a white person, it would have been considered racist. Okay, it invoked so many racist stereotypes. It was like a black Madonna, and there was a huge controversy over it because it was a multimedia installation using real elephant dung from the London Zoo. Now, Chris O'Feely had used this material before. Okay, but there were two pedestals composed of lumps of elephant dung, okay? But then, more provocatively, he had a lump of elephant dung as one of the breasts of the Madonna. Now, I could have written an essay about this, talking about African fertility cults and all kinds of things, right? I mean, it seems to me there were things that could be said about the use of manure, okay, lacquered manure, okay, as a material. But the way it got into the press in New York was that it was dung spattered, as if manure had been thrown at an image of the Madonna, and so there was a huge argument over the work. And what was suppressed, okay, by the liberal mainstream media was that the butterflies fluttering behind the Mary were actually cutouts of female genitalia from pornographic magazines, okay? You never heard a breath about that. No, the mainstream media, wanting to defend anything about the arts, right, instead tried to present it as that it was like a black Madonna. I mean, even the issue of Black Madonna would have been interesting historically, because there was a tradition of Black Madonnas in Spain and Italy, and all of that could have been brought in. But there was no curatorial explanation. And the Brooklyn Museum, instead of defending the work, okay, and making explanation of what the possible meanings might have been about the dung and so on and so forth, loved it. Okay, box office, great. Okay, let us cloak ourselves in the avant-garde mantle, et cetera. Right. So then Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York, he sort of, blundered into it without even seeing the work, and threatened to evict the Brooklyn Museum from its lease. I mean, he had no business, doing that. But that particular work in that show had passed without notice in England, because they're a Protestant and a very secular country right now. No notice of anything. But you bring that over to New York City, which has an enormous population of ethnic Catholics, okay, right? And I'm an atheist, right? But I also was raised Italian Catholic. So just like many Jews regard their tradition in a kind of cultural way, rather than in a religious way, me too. So you start offending, my tradition, and I'm like, I really go up in arms about it. I don't like this double standard, okay, which has been going on for decades in the United States, where you can get attention and praise in the press in a gallery or museum by a work of sacrilege against Catholic iconography, okay, where it would never be permitted against Jewish culture or Muslim culture, okay. So that double standard, I think is grossly hypocritical. It doesn't matter what the abuses of the bishops are or the Pope or whatever. These are bad stewards, but to just assume, okay, that that religion by definition, a Catholic religion by definition, is worthy of being a target in museums. I think it's one of the ways where the art world in the U.S. went off the rails. At any rate, I warned in my Salon.com column about that show, okay. And I was heartsick, because I thought that slowly the wounds had healed from that argument over Piss Christ, okay, in the 80s. Well, now, again, the difference, okay, between those controversies of the 80s and now 1999 is that talk radio, okay, was at its height, okay. Rush Limbaugh had, started out in the late 80s and then really became a national figure in the early 90s, and there were so many other, conservative talk shows nationwide. So all of this news about the Brooklyn Museum show was telegraphed, to the nation. It was one of the most damaging things to the history of the American arts, okay, because it absolutely stopped cold any possibility of a big expansion in arts funding, okay. And what is the end result? Okay, since 1999, I warned, okay. Well, the end result is that everywhere, okay, as the economy got bad, okay, and you had these, strapped local budgets everywhere, what's the first thing that's being cut? Arts programs, okay, arts and music programs for school children, okay, right? And so I'm so angry, okay, against the art world, okay, for it's this like posture of entitlement, okay. Of course we can do whatever we want in a public museum, of course, right? And who's paying the price? American school children here for this, okay. So I'm just so sick and tired. So what I'm saying, one of the big premises of my book, and it's something I've been talking about for years. The avant-garde is dead, okay? The avant-garde was a major movement in world culture, major, okay? It began in the late 18th century as part of Romanticism, okay? This rejection of authority in all areas, politics and religion and the arts, okay? It was an incredible movement with brilliant work of genius done, throughout the course of it. But it's over, okay? It died from the moment Andy Warhol, my hero, okay, embraced the imagery of consumer capitalism, of Campbell's soup cans, of Hollywood, Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor, of tabloid, newspaper covers, and so on. That was the end of it, okay? We are post-avant-garde, right? The last thing I would identify as authentically avant-garde would be Robert Mapplethorpe's photographs from the late 1970s of the gay, sadomasochistic underworld in New York. That's the last thing I would consider. Everything else is like people cloaking themselves in the mantle of the old avant-garde. Now, here's the point. Once an avant-garde gesture, okay, was costly, you paid a price for it. Okay? The Impressionists, for example, okay? At a time in France when there were no art galleries, there was no opportunity to show your work to the public, to get customers, except for this giant salon show that used to be like every 2 years, and then eventually after 1863, every year, okay? So if you were not painting in a way that would be acceptable to the conservative members of the salon jury that admitted the works for public show, okay? What you were getting, okay, by pursuing your artistic vision, okay, is poverty, okay, derision, ostracism, okay? There was tremendous prices paid, including right through the period of the abstract expressionists, okay, who were rejected and derided, okay? So many of those abstract expressionists, died like they were depressed, and they died, they were suicides. I mean, Jackson Pollock, until he was successful, he and his wife, Lee Krasner, they were living in an unheated, house out on a potato farm, okay, in eastern Long Island, okay? I mean, these people suffered for their art, okay? So what really burns me up, okay, is this whole stupid, fantasy that somehow, if we can just do some anti-Catholic thing and get a squawk out of the Catholic League, okay, and so on, that somehow we're avant-garde, okay, we can wave the avant-garde banner, okay, because now what does it get you? Okay, there's no price to be paid. Okay, gets you written up in the New York Times. Okay, right? Gets you a grant, from the government. Okay, it gets you a job, at the University of Miami. So on. I mean, so in other words, the rewards. You are rewarded. Okay, for this tired out, avant-garde gesture. This is this idea. Okay, and I've been on the book tour now, and people will call in, and there are people who are so stuck on this idea that art is oppositional. I mean, they don't use that word. Okay, there's art speaks truth to power. No, it doesn't. Okay, there's only one brief moment in the whole history of the world when art spoke truth to power. Okay, and that happened to be during this great period of the avant-garde. Okay, from the Romanticism down to Andy Warhol. That was a great period. Okay, but it's completely over for most of human history. Overwhelming, okay, art has been at one with, okay, the aims of its own culture. Art has been at one with the general audience in its own culture, even when the artworks themselves, have been sponsored by the wealthy, whether it's the aristocracy or the church. Okay, so this is what artists need to wake up to. Okay, get out of this dream haze that they're in, that somehow they're going to relive. Okay, the great annals of the avant-garde, which is long gone. It's so cheap, and it's also been very much driven into the ground by the orthodoxies of academe. In other words, for the last 30 years, these styles of approach to literature and art, post-structuralism, postmodernism, okay? It's a very cynical style, very supercilious, very superior, okay? It approaches art in terms of what's wrong with the artwork, okay? It's racism, sexism, homophobia, or there's some covert power play going on, or in some way it's completely ideological. That's the current premise right now in academe. Art equals ideology, okay? They see nothing else in the artwork except some covert political message, which as far as please, that's like Stalinist art, okay? That's like Nazi art, okay? So we've got these Stalinist Nazi minds, okay, who are teaching our most talented undergraduates right now. Right? So this is why, okay, the art world has flatlined. It's why the cultural criticism has flatlined. Okay, where are the great cultural critics, produced for 2 generations now from post-structuralism, postmodernism? They're absolutely nowhere. All right. So another one of the themes of this book is my attack on the kind of cynical atheism that's now very popular and that Christopher Hitchens was very responsible for. Christopher Hitchens, who knew nothing about religion, never lifted a finger, never went to the library, never researched anything about religion, just like sneered, okay, all right, his entire life, okay. Now, I'm an atheist. In fact, I started the fashion for American atheism back in the early 90s when I went on the road, for those books of the early 90s. There was Richard Dawkins was a prominent atheist, in England at that time, but no one else was going around saying, I'm an atheist, like that, okay? And suddenly everyone came out and waved their little atheist banner, in the past few years. But I respect religion, okay? I respect religion. Even if I don't believe in a personal God, right, I am a product of that multicultural movement in the 1960s, which is all about forming yourself, about Zen Buddhism. That was part of a heritage from the beatniks. Gary Snyder, the prominent beat poet, was he went to Japan and studied and was a Buddhist monk himself. Right? So all of those Buddhist ideas came to us from the beat period. But what we did in the 60s was that the movement toward Hinduism. Okay, we were very interested in India. That you had Ravi Shankar playing the sitar at Monterey. You had like sitar motifs and the birds 8 miles high and all kinds of stuff. Okay, what happened to that? Okay, all right. And people were taking, thank God I never took any of that stuff. Okay, but people were taking LSD and they were taking peyote, mescaline, all kinds of things, shrooms as they called them back then, to have these mystic visions of like the shamans of Mexico, etc. So there was this whole quest. There was a whole spiritual quest pattern, okay, in the 60s that involved being serious about religion. So you could be an atheist and yet be deeply moved, okay, by religious experience, okay? What happened to, the substitute for that is post-structuralism and postmodernism, these cumbersome, word-driven, jargon-ridden, systems which totally remove, a person, a young student, totally remove them from direct sensory experience of art, okay, or of life, okay? So what I'm saying is that that's one of the things that is caused the cultural divide in the U.S. right now between liberals and conservatives. Okay, because you have conservatives who are very church-going, and now a certain type of kind of desiccated secular humanism has taken over the liberal side. Now, I'm a secular humanist, but I think it's reached a dead end because because if you are a secular humanist, you're saying we reject religion, but here is our substitute vision of life and of the world. What substitute are liberals offering right now? What? Card-carrying membership in the Democratic Party? That is their substitute for religion, for the enormity of the history of world religions with so much comprehensive knowledge, accumulated observations, about life, okay? It is a scandal. If secular humanism is going to work, okay, as an alternative to conservative religion, you have to have art. Art is the substitute, okay? All right, and if your current academic orthodoxy is trash art and reduce it to ideology, then there's nothing on the left, nothing to offer, okay? The left has nothing to offer young people, okay? And then people wonder why the entire professional class in Manhattan and in LA is on meds, okay? They're all with antidepressants. They can barely survive, okay? And so why? Okay, because they have nothing, utterly hollow. All their Ivy League degrees, meaningless, okay? They've been mal-educated. They know nothing. They believe in nothing, okay? So in this book, okay, all right, I'm offering art, okay? And my vision of art was influenced by Oscar Wilde, who was the first art criticism I ever read. I was in high school in Syracuse, New York, and I stumbled in a secondhand bookstore on a collection of Oscar Wilde's epigrams, his witticisms, and I was fascinated by them. And then I also stumbled on his master, Walter Pater, who in both of them are actually in the heritage of Baudelaire in France and Gautier also in France. And it's the religion of art. It's the art for art's sake movement, okay, where your attitude toward the artwork is reverential, okay? And I also get that from my Italian-American heritage. I'm from an immigrant family. All four of my grandparents and my mother were born in Italy. And they came off the farm, okay? But the attitude of Italian peasants toward the arts is extremely positive. Art is not elitist, okay, in Italy. Okay, art belongs to everyone. Everyone knows the operas. Everyone knows the great artworks. I mean, even my grandfather worked in a factory, but we still had all my grandmother's house, these souvenirs from the Vatican with these works by Michelangelo and so on. The artist is regarded as a craftsman. You see. A person who works with your hands. There's a tradition in Italian culture, okay, of this practical workmanship. People came back from the factory and in their form of recreation was to weave baskets, or do metal work or make stone walls or a grape arbor or whatever. They're always making. My grandmother, my aunt, my mother, they all sewed, okay, to earn extra money. They made wedding dresses, So I was very used as a small child to people are always coming up to you and fingering what you're wearing. Oh, this is a beautifully sewn hem. This is a lapel, excellent. Okay, and so on. All right. So this all. So that's why I was so I hated that period in feminism, which was totally rejecting fashion in the fashion industry and fashion designers, because Italians have this idea of beauty, the beauty of fabric, the beauty of leather. Okay, and so even working class men dress like dandies. Okay, or there's a tradition of dandyism. Okay, and respect for fine workmanship. So I think that's a very important element in the way we discuss the arts. And so for every chapter in my book here, I always say what the materials are, okay, in each case, and talk about the limitations, about the limitations and possibilities, and the great fragility of artworks over time. That's another of my themes. How accidental sometimes the survival has been of artworks. Like like in my book, there's a chapter on on this beautiful bronze statue of the charioteer of Delphi. Okay, he was a winner of the chariot race at the Delphic Games, about 300 years before Christ. Now, those bronzes, okay, very few of them have survived from antiquity because they're valuable metal. Just like now, okay, as the economy, has had a downturn, suddenly nationwide, there's been a spate of like people going around, like bandits in the night and pulling out air conditioners. I don't know about it down here, but up in Pennsylvania, this has been going on, pulling out air conditioners from business things and ripping out the copper wires. We've got people going into McDonald's, okay, and like with plumbing tools and taking out the pipes, okay, and reselling them. So the same thing, all these bronzes, the only bronzes we have left of this, it was a huge, incredible artistic genre in antiquity, and the bronzes were just pillaged as Rome fell and police power waned. Poor people just took the bronzes, melted them down, and sold or reworked the metal. So the only bronzes we have usually are those that fishermen have caught in their nets, because of shipwrecks. In this particular case, the charioteer of Delphi survived only because there was, within 100 years of its being erected, there was an earthquake in the mountains and a great landslide, and so it protected it, all these years. And it was the statue was found, the horses were smashed, and the chariot itself is gone. But it's just this magnificent object, one of the very few that we have that still has the inlaid eyes and the silver, overlay on the lips, the teeth, and the eyelashes and so on. And it's just this magnificent object, a beautiful young man who's like trying to control his emotions, and suppress his sense of pride as he's being led around the victory track at the end. So this is, to me, artworks are very precious. Okay, I view them as like sacred objects. They deserve all of our reverence, and that's why I despise this kind of cynical discourse that is so fostered in our major universities. And what it's leading to, okay, is this thinning out, okay, of creativity, in the arts right now. So anyway, I'm criticizing liberals for their their cynicism. In terms of the arts, all right, and also their fantasy, that the avant-garde is still alive when it's not. And then but I'm also criticizing conservatives for they're constantly calling for a return to traditional values in education and the humanities. Okay, but you cannot restore respect for the Western tradition without also embracing the visual arts. And so this is required an effort on the part of many Protestant conservatives who have never looked at art. Okay, I'm saying it is hypocritical, okay, to call for a return to tradition in education without making an effort on your own to inform yourself about the visual arts and to educate your children also in the visual arts. So one of my target audiences for this book is homeschooling moms. Okay, they're conservative, church-going homeschooling moms. The homeschooling movement is getting bigger and bigger in this country, and I think it's happening kind of under the radar, and people don't realize what's exactly going on. I'm able to monitor it because I listen to so much talk radio, including I listen to sometimes actual religious shows where these issues are being discussed. And I've tried to produce a book that to have for progressive, conservative, church-going, homeschooling moms, just a handbook to get art, the visual arts, into the home environment, for young people. So therefore, my image choices were also guided by that. I had to keep pornography to here comes the hook. Okay, all right. How many minutes? Before the questions? Okay, 3 minutes. Okay, all right. So. Okay, great. We'll have questions. Okay, and so I had to moderate, the pornographic, in the book, because this is a problem. Okay, for conservative Protestants who are not used to looking at the nude, okay, at all, and consider all the nude by definition pornographic. Okay? It is a hard sell. Okay, but one of my arguments is that the beautiful athletic young man, okay, who was idealized in Greek art, okay, that's the first freestanding nudes in the whole history of art are these magnificent sculptures of these buff young men, the Kouros sculptures of the archaic period around 600 BC. What I'm saying is that development was simultaneous with the birth of democracy, okay? That it's not just a celebration of nudity, okay? It's a celebration of the birth of individualism, okay, in world history. Okay? And so for conservatives have to get over, I can see why you don't want, like, overtly erotic, paintings being given to the children, but there's a phobia about the nude, okay, in conservative culture that really has to end. Therefore, my picture choices were guided by that. I have a little bit sort of borderline porn, okay, with Titian's Venus with a mirror, okay, and she's like very beautiful, nude, etc. I have Bronzino's portrait of Andrea Doria, the great Genoese admiral, and there's like just a hint of a penis, there. So I talk about that, the problems of the penis, and then what else? I have Renee Cox, the African-American photographer, magnificent photo montage that she did. It's in my chapter on performance art, and it's a full-page, reproduction of it, where you have her. She's like put herself as a Wonder Woman, an avenger of racial injustice, and she went to like an S&M shop and bought these like dominatrix boots. So these fabulous, trashy dominatrix, and she's like sitting there on the Statue of Liberty. It's absolutely magnificent. But on the whole, I think that's just about it. Okay, in the book in terms of sex. If this were a book that was intended for a more general, audience, in other words, for liberals, I would have reproduced my favorite work of sacrilege, okay, which shows you how bad, Andre Serrano's Piss Christ was. I mean, when you see Salvador Dali's, I mean, I can hardly even repeat the title of it. It's like, what is it? It's like it's a parody of the Annunciation, of Mary's Annunciation, and it's a work that was in the Playboy Mansion for many years, and it's called Young Virgin Auto-Sodomized on the horns of her own chastity, I believe that's what it's called. Okay, and it's absolutely hilarious. I find it hilarious. It's like this like 1940s girl with like seam stockings and loafers, like leaning nude over a balcony, very bored. Okay, and you have all these like weird symbolic things coming out of the heavens. Okay, that are coming on, like they're kind of like bouncing off her buttocks, okay, and so on. And it's like again a parody of a kind of a late medieval or early Renaissance Annunciation scene where the angel comes, and announces to Mary that you have been chosen to be the vessel, of God's Son, etc. So Mary couldn't care less. You have all this activity going on and announcements and the force coming down from heaven, and it's absolutely hysterical. There's no way I'm going to. How can I ever sell that? Okay, to homeschooling moms? I knew that was going to be absolutely impossible. All right, well, on Dolly, maybe I should stop right there, and we're going to move to questions. Okay.